Rugby World Cup 2023, folks. Game number 4. The Aussies taking on the Georgians in Pool C. We're going to go through some squads, stats, predictions, and you guys can let us know your thoughts on how this one might be going to go. Pretty exciting one, given that it's a kind of low-ranked Australia team at number 9 and a relatively high-ranked for Georgian team at 11. So in the world rankings-wise, there's not that much between these sides, although the Aussies will go into this one as pretty big-time favourites in what is a tough looking pool. Obviously, under Eddie Jones, the Wallabies' run has not been fantastic, whereas the Georgians, kept Scotland scoreless in one half of rugby the other day. They thumped the Romanians, so yeah, they will be absolutely up for this. Remember, the Georgians, they want to get more game time against Tier 1 teams. You feel like they're in a similar position to Argentina prior to them getting in the Rugby Championship. So the Georgians need the World Cup as their showpiece to show what they can do. And that may mean taking it out on the Australians. We will see. For the Australians, they have made a few changes to their last side that played in France, against France, a couple of weeks ago. But we'll have to see if they're acclimatized to the conditions yet. It looks very, very, very hot in France right now. Gus Bell, Dave Porecki, and Taniela Tupou, that's the same front row. Those props for the Wallabies have been doing absolutely phenomenal work. Totally dominant ball carriers, which is fantastic to see. They're not just there for their scrummaging, but their scrummaging has been good. They actually managed to push the French pack around a wee bit, and this Aussie pack is massive. It's much, much bigger than the Georgian pack, over 100 and something plus kilos bigger. There's a lot of beef in this Aussie pack, so yeah, if they can get on top at scrum time and set piece, you feel like it's going to be a good day at the office for them. It'll start with those props. Richie, Arnold, Will, Skelton, that's part of the reason this front row and forward pack is so beefy, because those guys in the second row, man, they're putting some absolute kilos behind them. I mean, Will Skelton and Richie Arnold are both huge human beings. You might think you pick one or the other, but no, Eddie's gone with both. Then Tom Hooper, Fraser, McReight, and Rob Valetini as your back row. So you've essentially got another lock in the back row with Tom Hooper. He's only really new to the international scene, but he has been a tackling machine. I think averaging 13 across his last few games, so really, really good from him. And then Fraser McReight over the ball, the breakdown, and really sharp on attack. I feel like, honestly, it's part of the reason Michael Hooper gets left out of the squad is because just on form this year, Fraser McReight, not only defensively, but especially with his carrying, has just been the more effective of the two players. Sad as that is for Michael Hooper. But yeah, such is life sometimes when some young gun comes along and then supplants you. But yeah, anyway, that's a side point. Rob Valetini has been defensively solid. He'll be looking to bully the Georgians around the loose, but the Georgians have got some bloody good loose forwards as well. McDermott and Gordon, that's your 9-10. That's pretty steady as she goes, although it looks like Carter Gordon has had the goal kicking taken away from him, so a little bit less pressure on him this week with Ben Donaldson at fullback. Essentially, as Eddie said in the press conference, being picked to do the goal kicking. Midfield is also bolstered by the return of Samu Kerevi. He's an absolute ball-carrying 12, but he's up against a great defensive 12 for the Georgians, and then Jordi Petaia is there at 13. Good offloading game from him. Could look to find his wingers in some space. And then Nawaqanitawase, Koroibete, and Donaldson as your back three. Nawaqanitawase has been in phenomenal form. He looks so good at international level, better than he does at super level, which is weird. Most guys, they kind of go the other way around. But I mean, averaging 70 plus meters a game, averaging a clean break or two a game, very, very dangerous ball carrier. And Koroibete is just a huge high work rate player. He's going to run all day. He's going to run hard. And as I mentioned, Donaldson, 10 or 15 throughout his career. So it's essentially like a double playmaker thing there rather than a kind of specialist fullback. But, yeah, hopefully he goes good with the boot. Bench-wise, Faessler, Schoupp, and Nonggorr as your backup front row. So pretty inexperienced in the scheme of things. Rob Leota is there as your lock. Also loose forward cover if needs be. Langi, Gleeson as well. And 3 backs in Nick White, Lalakai, Foketi, and Vunivalu. So Foketi and Vunivalu both played pretty well in that last game against France, but they are dropped to the bench. And then Nick White is back into the 23 in place of Faessler Wasa. He certainly got a bigger boot. Maybe a little bit less nippy around the park. Different kind of 9. For the Georgians, it's always a side that I don't get to see enough of, but I feel like of all the European Tier 2 sides, it's probably the one I've seen the most of, so I feel like I'm semi-familiar with the Georgian guys. There's certainly a few guys who stand out and a few guys who I don't see enough of, but it's really pleasing to see how many of these guys, the ones that don't play in France play in Black Lion, which is like the Georgian one professional club which plays on the European circuit. So they are able to kind of develop players more than maybe they have been in the past. And a lot of these guys play their rugby in France, which is just really pleasing to see, because if you're being paid to be a professional rugby player, then you're going to get pretty good at your job of playing rugby. So front row is Abuladze, Mamukashvili and Papidza. It's great to see the hooker Mamukashvili fit, because he went off injured in that last game against Scotland. Early didn't last the first half, but the veteran has bounced back from injury. So, that's really, really pleasing to see. Abuladze, the loose head, wasn't actually in the team for that game, and Papidza is up from the bench. So it's tinkered with front row. Maybe not the usual front row for Georgia we're used to seeing. Also, Chiashvili in the second row comes into the 23 alongside the veteran Mikhail Tadze. Jalagonia at number 6 shifts from number 8 with the return of Beka Gorgadze. He was my favourite Georgian player, Gorgadze, at the last World Cup for Georgia. I mean, maybe overall. He was bloody good. He was cranking through run meters. He was making tackles for days. He was just one of those genuine, all-rounder. Think like an Adi Savia. Think like a Pablo Matera. Like one of those loosies who can just do a bit of everything and do them bloody well. Pretty much always his team's top tackler. And for the forwards, pretty much always the team's best ball carrier. That's just what I mean about him. So he's definitely one to watch, although he's just come back from injury. So he may not be quite at 100%. But then Jalagonia made 20 out of 21 tackles in that game against Scotland. So he was also putting his hand up. Saganadze is apparently not quite fit, which is disappointing because he's also really good. Avinashvili shifts from 6 to 7 with the kind of reshuffle in the back row. Lobjanidze is still there at 9, which is pretty steady. And then Makava, the 10, the youngster, continues on. I mean, he's only had a limited number of game times for Georgia, but he ran it 7 times in that last game, I think past 10, so decently balanced. But Georgia had no ball in the second half against Scotland, so it was really kind of harder to see what he could do. But he still ran for 40 metres when he had the ball, so a decent wee running game on him. Shirakadze has the 12, and he's the captain. I mentioned, defensive powerhouse player. He made 23 out of 23 tackles against Scotland. So if there is a guy to keep Samu Kerevi quiet, it's that guy. And then Tapaladze is there at 13. Tabutadze is on the right wing. Modabadze is on the left wing. And then Niniashvili is at fullback. Niniashvili is absolutely going to get all the spotlight on him. If you saw the conversation we had with Sergio Parisse and Chris Robshaw the other day, if you haven't seen it, check it out. But when he was picking his ones to watch, he picked Niniashvili, the Georgian fullback. He really rates him. It was great to get a chance to talk to some former internationals. But check that one out if you haven't seen it. 115 metres against Scotland. Beat 5 defenders against Scotland. He is absolutely danger. The front row replacements are the same, with Kigashvili dropping to the bench. Same lock replacement. Jayanai and Churikidze comes in as the loose forward replacements. And then the 3 same back replacements as that game against Scotland. So, it's a pretty stable Georgian squad with a little bit of tinkering. But like I said, they just didn't have enough ball against Scotland, which remains the question. Across the 80 minutes, how well can they go toe-to-toe with the Australians? Remember, it's a young Australian squad, but it's also a pretty young Georgian squad as well. Georgia's line-out, if we can get into some stats, was at 61% against the Scots, which is not going to be good enough to beat the Aussies. You feel like set piece is going to have to be good. They're going to need to hold their own against the Aussie scrum. And the Georgian scrum gets a lot of attention to it, but it's maybe not quite as powerful as it used to be. And there's a lot of extra kilos in that Aussie side. So scrum needs to get parity, and the line-out needs to be 85% plus, you would imagine. So set piece needs to be good. And they may get some chances to let loose some of these attacking Georgian backs, man. The Aussies have the worst clean breaks conceded rate of any of the Tier 1 teams. They're conceding 7, I think it was, or 8 clean breaks a game. Some of the teams are really stingy, 3 or 4. But the Aussies have been conceding a lot, admittedly playing against some pretty highly ranked teams in the All Blacks and against the Box and whatnot, and they played France. So they've played some tough teams recently, but that's where they're at. And the goal kicking has been bad, 57%. Of all the teams I'm tracking the stats on, it's only better than Japan at 54. So it's not been good. That's why Donaldson's in the side. The Aussie line-out, though, has been good. 89%. Very, very solid. You'd expect so with all the tall timber they've got. And they got some good return from the high balls against France. Niniashvili is a pretty good kind of specialist fullback, so it may actually be an area where they target Donaldson, the Georgians, because, as I said, he's more of a 10 come 15. But, yeah, the Aussies got some pay when they had Vunivalu chasing high balls and Nawaqanitawase chasing high balls. So whether they'll get Koroibete to do the same thing or maybe save it for when Vunivalu comes on, we'll have to wait and see. And they'll be looking to get on top up front, the Aussies for sure. Yeah, Luke Pearce is the ref. It's on from Paris. Apparently it's a sellout. That's going to be a heck of a venue. Eddie Jones was really talking about in the press conference like how great it is that, you know, a match between Australia and Georgia at Stade de France is going to sell out. Speaks to the place where rugby is at the moment in France, how popular the game is. I remember a lot of these Georgian guys play their rugby in France, so they will be very familiar. I mean, they'll know Skelton as well, to be fair. They've only played once, these two sides, back in the last World Cup, and it was 27 points to 8. So the Aussies got a pretty comfortable win. They'll be looking to back up for sure and get their first win under Eddie. Luke Pearce is the ref. 6 o'clock local kickoff, which is 4 o'clock in the morning for those of us in New Zealand. And it's like something like 1 something in the morning for you guys in Australia. It's pretty bad. It's pretty bad timing, so you may want to watch it on demand. I know it's on free to air on Channel 9 for you guys, also on Stan Sports. So for you VPN folks, you can jump on Channel 9 if you want to watch this one. Yeah, it should be a really good game. Predictions-wise, Aussies by 22 is what the bookies are saying, and 13 points is what the Rugby Forecast algorithm is saying. I feel like 22 seems like too much, but it's very similar to that former scoreline, so maybe it's kind of there or thereabouts. We'll have to wait and see. It's a big competitive pool, this one, so I mean, from an Aussie point of view, you need to you definitely need to get a win, and you probably want to bank a bonus point if you can. For the Georgians, like I said, this is their moment in the spotlight where they can put their hand up and say to all those kind of people that run the game for Tier 1 that we belong here as well. So you can bet that they will be fired up. You guys let us know your thoughts. Subscribe to the channel. Talk to you again soon. See you later.